If there's one star everyone desperately wants to see return to the spotlight, it's Brendan Fraser. Although he never completely faded from the public consciousness. He's been the subject of memes and GIFs, that Golden Globes clap anyone? But if we're not making him into a meme, we're asking, whatever happened to that guy anyway? Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today, we're looking at whatever happened to Brendan Fraser.
Hello. I was wondering if this is...
And it's certainly a valid question. After all, Fraser was absolutely everywhere in the late 90s and early 2000s. He's perhaps most well known as Rick O'Connell from the Mummy series, two of which were released in 1999 and 2001. But he also starred in the likes of George of the Jungle, Bedazzled, Looney Tunes Back in Action, and Crash, in one of his finest dramatic roles.
All right, if we can't duck this thing, we're gonna have to neutralize it. What we need is a picture of me pinning a medal on a black man.
Those movies alone combined to gross over $1.2 billion, making Brendan Fraser one of the most profitable leading men of his day. But somewhere along the way, everything changed, and certainly not for the better. The first and perhaps most recognizable thing to plague Fraser's career was his poor choice in movies and resulting box office bombs. The first two Mummy movies grossed over $400 million each. And while everyone remembers The Mummy, no one remembers his other 1999 release, a movie called Dudley Do-Right, which saw Fraser as a Canadian Mountie. That movie grossed just $10 million on a $70 million budget, making it an enormous box office bomb.
Dudley!
However, one bomb does not a career ruin, and Fraser was lucky enough to recover. But then they kept coming. In 2001, he starred in an even bigger disaster called Monkey Bone, which grossed just $7.6 million on a $75 million budget. 2 years later was the aforementioned Looney Tunes Back in Action. Nowadays, it's a beloved film, but when it was released, it grossed just shy of $70 million on an $80 million budget. Certainly not as devastating, but a bomb nonetheless. It's clear that people loved Brendan Fraser in the Mummy movies, but that didn't mean they would love Brendan Fraser in just anything. Hollywood executives looked at the box office performance of these three not outrageously budgeted movies and began to question Fraser's capability as a leading man and box office draw. But then came an incident that was far more destructive to Fraser's career and his mental health. In an exclusive sit-down with GQ's Zach Baron in 2018, Fraser recounted a groping incident that took place in the summer of 2003, just a few short months before Looney Tunes was released. During a lunch held by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, ex-president Philip Burke allegedly grabbed Fraser's butt and fondled him with his finger. Burke in turn admits that he pinched Fraser's butt in a friendly manner, but calls Fraser's story a total fabrication. Regardless, this particular incident caused Fraser to spiral into depression. Fraser recounts that he entered a daze and retreated both into himself and away from the public eye. In Fraser's words, it ruined, quote, who I was and what I was doing. Work withered on the vine for me. In my mind, at least, something had been taken away from me. He asked for an apology from Burke and from the HFPA, but refused to take the allegation public, saying, quote, I didn't want to contend with how that made me feel, or it becoming part of my narrative. Fraser also assumes that his allegation and personal pushback against Burke caused him to be blacklisted by the Hollywood Foreign Press. He states that he curried disfavor with the group and was rarely invited back to the Golden Globes, which are hosted by the HFPA. The HFPA in turn denies any involvement in Fraser's lack of work, putting the onus of blame on Fraser and Fraser alone. This self-imposed retreat, depression, and possible blacklisting by the HFPA are mirrored in Fraser's filmography. He didn't work much between 2003 and 2008, appearing in just 4 movies. Sure, one of those movies was Crash, but the other 3 are very small and low-budgeted films that you've probably never heard of. In comparison, Fraser released 10 movies between 1999 and 2003. In turn, Fraser's lack of substantial work started to make him feel like a failure. He tells GQ that he was considered for the role of Superman in the early 2000s. The movie became 2006's Superman Returns, and if you recall, Superman was not played by Brendan Fraser, but by newcomer Brandon Routh. This was a major blow to Frasier's confidence, and he unfortunately considered himself a failure. Things got even worse for Frasier in 2007, as he and Afton Smith, his wife of 9 years, decided to divorce. However, the following year saw Brendan briefly returning to profitable leading man status. 2008 saw the release of both The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and Journey to the Center of the Earth, which combined to gross over $640 million at the box office.
That's 1 point for me, right?
Who's keeping track?
Unfortunately, this return to stardom was severely ill-timed, as Frasier's health was falling apart. He tells GQ, quote, "By the time I did the third Mummy picture, I was put together with tape and ice." Years of stunt work and intense physical acting had taken its toll, and Frasier required multiple surgeries. These included a laminectomy, knee replacement, vocal cord repair, and the bolting of compressed spinal pads. If that sounds like a total nightmare, that's because it was. Frasier spent the next 7 years in and out of various hospitals. He was forced to take roles in movies that he wasn't proud of, and which paid considerably less than he was used to, which of course only added to his depression and sense of failure. If he wasn't in the surgery room, recovering from a surgery or preparing for an upcoming surgery, he was in and out of family court. By 2013, Frasier could no longer afford his annual child support payment of $900,000, which, if our math checks out, is $75,000 a month. In early 2013, he petitioned the court for a reduced payment, claiming that he was unable to procure the necessary funds due to a significant lack of work. When all is said and done, there wasn't one thing that ruined Frasier's career. The man was struck by an unfortunate amount of bad luck, and everything seemed to coalesce into a perfect storm of career and personal degradation. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Let's recap. In the early 2000s, he starred in a handful of devastating bombs, which may have impacted his status as a profitable leading man. In 2003, while in the midst of said bombs, he was allegedly groped by the ex-president of the Hollywood Foreign Press and potentially blacklisted for speaking out, which led to a substantial lack of work. This lack of work made him feel like a failure and further worsened his depression. His marriage subsequently fell apart and he divorced from his wife of 9 years. His body then fell apart, and he was in and out of hospitals for 7 years while he was restructured and repaired. And in the middle of all of that, Frasier was facing significant financial troubles and could no longer afford his massive child support payments of $75,000 a month, may we remind you. So that's what happened to Brendan Frasier. It's certainly not an easy answer, but these things seldom are. Luckily, Frasier's career seems to be on the upswing again, and he's made a name for himself on television. Since 2015, he's starred in shows like Texas Rising, Trust, and Condor. He currently portrays Cliff Steele, also known as Robot Man, on DC Universe's Doom Patrol. Maybe it's not leading man material, but it's something. And at this point, we're happy to see him in anything. He deserves it.
Sometimes George fall out of treehouse, but not feel stupid. Something good always happen after. George's just lucky, I guess.
Brendan Fraser deserves a comeback more than anyone in Hollywood, in our opinion. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments or tweet me at Phoebe_WM. And check out this video.